Right. It's been too long. But I am back again. 2023, new year, same problems. But we just gonna keep trucking, man. Keep doing what we gotta do. Glad to be back. Let me just go ahead and do something real fast. What's up, M-Benz? Hope you stick around for the long haul, cause we got a good one today. Let me just put something in the chat on IG, and you'll do it like that. Pin my own comment, or try to at least. How do you do that? There we go. So yeah, I just pinned my Cash App, y'all, on IG. That's watching this. It's been a while, man. I mean, for a long time, I've been just, not really focusing on the monetary aspect of all of this. I'm not doing this to get paid. I'm not doing this to get rich, but just threw my Cash App up there, man, if you guys want to give some donations or whatever, because, this does take time. It does take work, and, I'm in a studio away from my family. I could be doing other things, but I'm doing this. Not trying to browbeat, anybody, because I would be doing this regardless. But just thought I'd throw the tip cup out there, man, and ask for, little tools and fuels if it moves y'all, if it's in y'all heart. Support your boy, so that way I can continue to expand and give y'all some better material, better production quality and everything else, because I'm new to this, and, I don't really have all the fancy frills and everything else. The only thing I have is my mind and this mouthpiece. So if I could do this for a living, trust me, guys, I would. But, I don't mind having a 9 to 5, but, again, this takes time, it takes work. And so just threw my Cash App out there, man. If it moves y'all, it is what it is. If not, it's all good. I'm going to still do this anyway, and I still love y'all. All right. We here, we back, and I am glad to be back, man. For real, I ain't posted in a long time. YouTube, IG, I haven't done anything. I've been wanting to sort of cleanse over the past month, a month and a half, through Thanksgiving and on into Christmas and the New Year. I just kind of wanted to fall back from social media a little bit, and I told myself after the New Year I was coming back strong, and I got a good one today. What is it? I know it's Martin Luther King Day coming up. Tomorrow? This is MLK weekend. I know many of you all have Monday off, have tomorrow off. You're probably thinking that I'm gonna come with some MLK content. If you've been keeping up with my boy Chad O. Jackson, he and I have been doing a lot of collaborating recently, and we've been talking about MLK a lot. All right. Saying a lot of things that are making a lot of people upset. But I didn't come here to talk about MLK. I may get him later. But as you can see from the title of the live stream, if you're watching on IG, the title is Children of the Rainbow, Homosexuality and Communism. All right? Now I'm going to give a bit of a breakdown. Because, see, you all are seeing this whole LGBTQIA plus nonsense, and many of you are saying, well, where did this come from exactly, right? I mean, you hear people throwing out terms such as cultural Marxism or neo-Marxism. Well, we're going to talk about it because there is a reason why we are in the position that we are in today. And I want to give some historical background and give you all something that, just a wider, a broader context so that you can have the information that you need in order to make the argument, make the case as to why what we are seeing is in fact evil, wicked, and demonic. Why? Because the people who came up with these theories and ideas said as much. They said as much. And we're going to talk about a few. I have 4 in particular that I want to discuss. I thought 4 would be good enough, right? like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? But the four people that I am about to discuss today could very well have their own hour to 2 hour long breakdown in and of themselves. But I'm going to try to take four individuals in particular, and I'm going to try and cram them all in and give a concise breakdown of each one of these horsemen in, less than an hour and a half to 2 hours or so. If need be, I can break this up into two parts, but we'll see how it goes. All right, we'll see how it goes. All right, where do we start? Well, I'm going to start off with a quote. This is a quote from a man named Michael Swift. Michael Swift wrote for a publication titled New York City's Gay Community News. Now, this article was published in February of 1987. The name of this article was titled The Gay Revolution. The Gay Revolution. A quote from that article, written by Michael Swift, reads as such: "We will sodomize your sons, emblems of your feeble masculinity, of your shallow dreams and feeble lies. We shall seduce them in your schools, in your youth groups, in your movie theater bathrooms, wherever men are men together." That's a quote from Michael Swift. Now, to be fair, this is satire. Michael Swift calls himself mocking what became known as the conservative panic with respects to the new fangled explosion, so to speak, in the push for equal rights for homosexuals. This was said to be a satirical piece that was meant to mock conservatives in the late 1980s who were attempting to warn people that the mainstreaming of the homosexual lifestyle could lead to long-term social ramifications that many of folk could not foresee. And he's like, man, this is a joke. What do you think we're trying to do? You think we're trying to sodomize your sons? Emblems of your feeble masculinity, your shallow dreams and feeble lies? He was mocking conservatives. Because, of course, when you read this, it sounds absurd. Gay or not gay, this is so wicked. I mean, come on. Do you really think this is what we're trying to do? Well, fast forward to 2023, and that little satirical piece written by Michael Swift didn't age too well, and I did it. So, keep that quote in mind from our friend Michael Smith. Now, in order to get an understanding of why we are here today, our journey starts in Frankfurt, Germany in the 1920s. For those of you who are familiar, let me just read a quote. Are you saying this? No, I'm not saying this. That was a quote. I don't know if you're referring to the quote that I just read, but that quote came from a 1987 article published in New York City's Gay Community News by a man named Michael Swift. That was his quote. Now, our journey starts in Frankfurt, Germany in the 1920s. For those of you who are familiar with this type of information, you should know exactly where I'm going with this. Our journey begins first and foremost with the Frankfurt School, a.k.a. the Social Research Institute of Frankfurt, Germany at Goethe University. It became known simply as the Frankfurt School. Now, how fitting that the Frankfurt School is housed in Goethe or at Goethe University. Goethe is the name, of course, of Johann von Wolfgang Goethe, the man who wrote the play Faust. Hence where we get the term Faustian bargain. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Goethe's Faust, you should go and read that piece. Why is it so significant when you look at the synchronicity? Because Goethe's Faust was a favorite of none other than Karl Marx himself. It is said that Marx was so enamored with Goethe's Faust that he could nearly quote the play line for line, and he was especially enamored with the words spoken by none other than Mephistopheles. Who was Mephistopheles in Goethe's Faust? Mephistopheles is the devil himself. So let's start with the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School is where we get the term critical theory. See, a lot of people are running around, once again, critical theory, critical race theory, right? Of course, this is nothing more than another faux straw man issue that the conservative electorate is attempting to get their constituents or their fellow political compatriots to rally around in an effort to boast the electoral successes of the Republican officials that they support. This is not a real issue, you see. Or the people who are opposed to things like critical race theory, to quote Michael Eric Dyson, are simply opposed to them because they don't, in fact, know what it means. I'm sorry, Mr. Dyson, but I am opposed to critical race theory, and I know exactly what it means. You, on the other hand, are exploiting the ignorance of the people that clap like stupid seals whenever you open your fat mouth. You see, but I know exactly what I'm talking about. My homegirl on Instagram, Layla Gray, she goes by the name Propaganda Fluent on Instagram. She posted a reel from a Vice panel that she was on discussing feminism. And in the reel, the question was asked, does a trans man have the right, or should a trans woman have the right to speak about feminism or women's issues or something to that effect? Well, let me say this. Of course, a trans man has the right to speak about feminism. A person can speak about whatever issues they want to speak about. I have the right to speak about feminism. A trans woman is a man just like me. So I'll be damned if you tell me what I can and cannot speak about, because I know more about feminism than most of you. And I'm not talking about the viewing audience. I'm talking about the people who support feminism and believe in its tenets, those who promote it. They don't have the foggiest idea what the hell they're talking about. And I'm going to expose it right here and now. So yeah, a trans woman can talk about feminism same way I can, because he is a man just like me. Did y'all pick up on that? Now, let's go back to the Frankfurt School. Now, the Frankfurt School was composed of a group of researchers and intellectuals. Now, one of the key figures involved in the Frankfurt School is where I chose to begin. I only got, once again, four. Just the four horsemen of the LGBTQ apocalypse. We're going to start with a man some of you may be familiar with if you went to college and studied a psychology class at a university. And this man's name is none other than Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich was born March 24th, 1897 in Austria-Hungary, which is now Ukraine. He died on November 3rd, 1957 in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, right here in the United States. Now, who is Wilhelm Reich? Well, let me read. Wilhelm Reich was a Viennese psychiatrist who developed a system of psychoanalysis that concentrated on overall character structure rather than an individual's neurotic symptoms, or should I say, on the overall character rather than an individual neurotic symptom. His early work on psychoanalytic technique was overshadowed by his involvement in sexual politics and by orgonomy. We're going to talk about orgonomy, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term orgonomy. It is a pseudo-scientific system that he developed because Wilhelm Reich was one sick son of a bitch. He was a mentee of none other than Sigmund Freud. For those of you who don't know, for as much as we talk about cultural Marxism, many of us do not incorporate the Freudian aspect of the cultural Marxist ideology, because what the researchers at the Social Research Institute, which is what was just a long name for the Frankfurt School, what they attempted to do, or what they successfully did, was they combined classical Marxism with Freudian psychodynamics. Wilhelm Reich was a key figure in the Frankfurt School movement, and his mentor was none other than Sigmund Freud himself. Let me direct myself back to my bullet points about Wilhelm Reich. Reich was trained at the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute and joined the faculty of the Vienna Psychoanalytic Institute in 1924. In The Function of the Orgasm, this was a book of his published in 1927, he argued that the ability to achieve orgasm, called orgastic potency, was an essential attribute of the healthy individual. Failure to dissipate pent-up sexual energy by orgasm could produce neurosis in adults. This work led him into the sexual politics movement, an attempt to combine radical left-wing politics with the advocacy of sexual education and freedom. Now, listen to what I'm saying, because many of you, when we talk about how the West, in a wider sense, but in the United States more specifically, how did we divulge into such repugnant moral decadence? When did this begin? See, people like to look at the 1960s and the hippie and the free love and the free sex and the countercultural movement and everything else. Well, that was simply a thing that had come to its head at that particular point. But radical sexual left-wing politics began as far back as the 1920s, not the 1960s. It happened in the 1920s. Let's go back to Reich. And Reich was the key figure who spurned it all. Wilhelm Reich. Now, peep where I'm about to go. Hence the title of this live stream. Here we go. In 1928, he, meaning Reich, joined the Communist Party and toured the Soviet Union in 1929. I'm sorry. He corresponded with Leon Trotsky. He met with Sergei Einstein and had a lecture published with critical comments by party officials. His report on the visit became known as, check this out, became known as the Sexual Revolution. In 1936, Wilhelm Reich is the man who is given the credit by historians and researchers as being the man who first coined the term. Wilhelm Reich coined the term sexual revolution in his essay back in 1936. Not the 1960s, not the 1970s, but 1936. And in the sexual revolution, Reich, he praised the undermining of patriarchal authority in the collective farms, but he warned that the banning of homosexuality and abortion foretold the demise of the revolution. But what Reich was doing was he was sort of foretelling his own demise, and we'll get to that. Because what he was trying to get those who were involved in the revolution, the Communist International Proletariat Workers' Revolution, was he said you all have to abandon your strict moral codes as they pertain to sex, because if you do not, you are going to undermine your very own revolution. Reich's political and sexual ideas led to his expulsion from the International Psychoanalytic Association, that IPA, in 1934, after which he devoted himself to orgonomy, an attempt to measure something he called orgons, which orgons are described as units of cosmic energy Reich believed energized the nervous system. So he was kicked out of the Psychoanalytic Association. And the reason why he was kicked out of the International Psychoanalytic Organization in large part was due to his affiliation with the Communist Party. Because what ended up happening to Reich is that his politics were too radical for the psychoanalytic community, but his sexual ideas were too radical for the Communist Party. So eventually, by the 1940s, 1950s, he had become a pariah. And we're going to get to that. All right? Through his study of human behavior, particularly the libido, the instinctual, physiological, or psychic energy associated with sexual urges, Reich came to believe in the existence of an energetic life force that he termed orgon energy, which was produced by something he called bions, which were microscopic orgon units of energy vessels in a state of transition between the non-living and the living. Now, what does this sound like to you all? Oh man, we just get started. So y'all want to know the roots and the foundation of where all this comes from, right? Okay. You want to know, I'm going to tell you. We just not getting started. And it feels good to be back at Shop Talk Podcast Studio, because there's some real shit finna go down in here today. Not that pablum, not that babble. We gonna get into some real shit. The process consisted of the patient in a specially constructed cabinet called the orgon energy accumulator, or the orgon box, which Reich claimed captured and preserved orgon energy in the atmosphere. He later leased orgon boxes as therapy for many illnesses, including cancer. So he thought that his orgon box, his sex box, could cure cancer. Pretty much, Reich was saying that pent-up sexual energy is the cause of all illness. So let's reverse it. So if you were to dissipate, going back to what I read, if you were to dissipate your sexual energy, then that could, right, bring you health. So have more orgasms. The FDA eventually would crack down on Reich because they called him a quack. This is ridiculous. It's a quack. You can't, what? Organ, but you can't sell this shit. And especially you're claiming that it cures cancer. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Well, screw the FDA. Let the market decide. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it is what it is. The FDA was around at the time, and they said, bro, you got to cut this out. And he didn't. He refused. And as a result, he was punished. He had most of his work confiscated. Well, pretty much all of his work was confiscated. A lot of it was destroyed. And Reich was eventually imprisoned. He was sentenced to, I believe, somewhere around 2.5 years in prison for violating certain laws and regulations with regard to his therapeutic treatments and what have you. And he wouldn't even serve out the full 2.5 years of his prison sentence. He died, I believe it was of heart failure, not even a year into his imprisonment. This was in 1957. The crackdown on Reich is believed by many, or should I, not many, let me take that back. The crackdown on Reich and his work is believed by today's left to be one of the biggest examples of censorship in American history. How dare you? How dare you? George Floyd changed the world. We're going to get your stupid ass up out of here. Goodbye. All right, we're going to move on. You come back, I'm going to bounce your ass again. All right. I got a couple of quotes from Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich, in his book, The Mass Psychology of Fascism. Oh, again, at this time, fascism and communism were, they were engaged in a little back and forth. You dig what I'm saying? And so Reich said that fascism would fall to communism because fascism had too strict a moral code, once again, particularly as it pertained to sex. If the communists wanted to topple the fascists of Europe, they had to abandon their strict moral codes. So in his book, The Mass Psychology of Fascism, this is what Reich says. Reich says, religiosity that is hostile to sex is the product of an authoritarian society. That's in the Mass Psychology of Fascism by Wilhelm Reich. We're going to move on. Another quote, again, from the Mass Psychology of Fascism. Reich writes, this idealization of, listen to this. The idealization of motherhood is essentially a means of keeping women from developing a sexual consciousness and breaking through the barriers of sexual repression, of keeping alive their sexual anxieties and guilt feelings. The very existence of woman as a sexual being would threaten the authoritarian ideology. Her recognition and social affirmation would mean its collapse. So what did I just read? What Reich is saying, he's saying that we should no longer idealize womanhood, or motherhood, should I say, because when we idealize motherhood, we're putting women in a very strict moral box with respect to her sexuality. We must liberate women from this kind of sexual puritanism in order to break the back or break the will of the authoritarian society, which he, of course, termed the fascist society. See, communism is not authoritarian. Only fascism is. And our idealization of womanhood is what is keeping alive the fascist state. Listen to the left today. See, this is something else that I said recently on a live stream with my homies Chad O. Jackson and Layla Gray. I explained, and to the viewing public, that the charge of fascism was being levied at anyone who was opposed to the international communist conspiracy. And this was the common refrain of every communist apparatchik the world over, going all the way back again to the 1920s and the 1930s, during the prime of men like Wilhelm Reich, even when the charge of fascism was not justified, because communists had successfully convinced the world that fascism was the threat and not communism. Oh, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. And I'm going to say this too, for those of you who don't know. Wilhelm Reich, he wrote an autobiography, and I tried to find, I don't have the book. I tried to pull some quotes off the internet. I tried to find some transcripts, some text and everything, but there were a lot of paywalls, some things I couldn't get past. So what I'm about to tell you is going strictly off memory, but I believe this is from Wilhelm Reich's autobiography titled Passions of Youth. Just to give you some background on how sick this man was. Wilhelm Reich said it himself that he first began to have sexual urges as early as 4 years old. Wilhelm Reich details in Passions of Youth that he can recall getting bathed by his mother, and they would both bathe together nude. And he recalls as a child having sexual fantasies about his own mother. Oh, it gets worse. Wilhelm Reich also grew up on a farm. He notes in the Passions of Youth that he can recall for the first time as a young child, or he probably wasn't young. He was probably, he had probably reached puberty at this point, given what he details. He details what it was like for the first time seeing animals engaging in sex. He said watching animals have sex aroused him to the point of ejaculation. He, from there, would participate in what many would consider flat out bestiality, because Wilhelm Reich, in his own words, would take foreign objects and use, I'm trying to be as PG as I can, he would penetrate the animals on his family farm, and watching the animals get excited, sexually excited, would cause him to have an erection to the point of ejaculation. That is, in fact, the man who coined the term sexual revolution. Wilhelm Reich, member of the Frankfurt School in Germany. One of the founders of what we today refer to as cultural Marxism. Now, we're done with Reich for now. He may get revisited, but I'm going to move on. I tried to go in some type of chronological order here. We're going to move on to the second horseman of the apocalypse. And the second horseman of the apocalypse, I'm sorry I'm not reading much of y'all comments. My boy, the real ICEO is in the building. I love that young man. He be dropping some gems. He be showing me mad love. And I'm going to tell you right now, he going to blow up. He going to blow up because dog he be laying it down. What's up, my guy? Again, y'all, put my Cash App tag. This is the first time I'm doing that. Trying to figure out a way to start monetizing a little bit. You know, I'm not in this for the money. I'm not looking for money, but I just threw that out there just in case, you know, if y'all like it, y'all could donate. It'll help me, you know, spend more time putting out content. If y'all enjoy it, you know, that's why I don't post much, because I'm too busy trying to live a normal life. So if y'all like what I'm doing, throw a little bit in the tip cup. You don't have to, but if the spirit moves you, feel free. You know, if y'all don't give me a single dime, I still love y'all, and I'm still be doing this regardless. All right. Harry Hay. Oh, Kinsey. Oh, Alfred Kinsey. We're going to get to Alfred Kinsey, man. Don't stop stealing my thunder. Stop stealing my thunder, man. We're going to get to Alfred Kinsey. But now we're going to move on to a man named Harry Hay. Do y'all know who Harry Hay is? Raise your hand if you know who Harry Hay is. We're going to talk about Harry Hay. And I think of the four horsemen of this apocalypse, I think I put down the most information about Harry Hay. Now, Harry Hay was born April 7th, 1911 in Sussex, England. He died on October 24th in 2002 in San Francisco, California. All right? And going back to Reich, he became, like I said, a pariah, ousted from the Communist Party, ousted from the psychoanalytic community. He was fleeing all around, fleeing from country to country to country because, you know, he was under attack for his work. And he wound up in the United States eventually, where he died in Pennsylvania. But let's move on to Harry Hay. Let's talk about Harry Hay. Y'all gonna like this. So Harry Hay, who is Harry Hay? Harry Hay was an American gay rights activist who believed that homosexuals should see themselves as an oppressed minority entitled to equal rights. He acted on his convictions in large measure, promoted the dramatic changes in the status of homosexuals that took place in the United States in the second half of the 20th century. So that's a summation of Harry Hay. We're going to get into some of the details, okay? Although Hay was born in England, he moved as a young boy to California with his family, and he later attended Stanford University. However, due to health problems, he left college in 1932. The next year, Harry Hay discovered Marxism. There you go again. Chuck, why you keep every time I watch your lives or I come on YouTube and this and that, you always talking about this communism, Marxism stuff. Why? Can you talk about something else, bruh? Let me tell you why I always talk about communism, why I always talk about Marxism, Leninism, etc. Because it is the ideology of Karl Marx that perfectly encapsulates every single solitary thing that is a deviation of the one truth, and that is God's truth. Every other form of so-called truth is counterfeit morality. So I talk about Marxism, communism, Leninism as much as I do because that's all you need to understand in order to understand what it means to rebel against God. I'm not no preacher, and I'm not a man of the cloth. Because listen, I need salvation just as much as the next man because I done did some low down things in my life, and I'm going to probably do some more. But there's a type of guilt and shame you got to feel when you do something you know is out of pocket. You understand what I'm saying? So I talk about communism as much as I do because, hell, look at what we're going through right now. Everything that we talk about, whether we're talking about this New World Order agenda, the neoliberal globalist agenda to destroy the civilization state, to destroy national sovereignty, borders, men, women, morality. It doesn't get more simple than this. We don't need to overly complicate it. So that's why I talk about communism, Marxism, Leninism as much as I do. Because everywhere I seem to go, there it is. My bad. I'm mad at y'all or something. I know y'all like hearing about this Marxism stuff, don't y'all? Because we think we know, but we really don't, do we? Because there's layers to the wickedness. It gets deeper than you think. Because this ain't simply about wealth and income redistribution. Now, I get deeper than that. And you're going to find out how deep it get when I start to break down Harry Hay. He discovered Marxism, which he believed would support his homosexuality under its principles. He was later introduced to the Communist Party, CPUSA, but the Communist Party forbade gay and lesbian activity. Oh, the Communists forbid. They didn't like homosexuals in the Communist Party. And I'm going to just cut to the chase and tell you why. Because, see, you have to understand that the Communist Party was a top-down hierarchical model. It was strict, it was rigid, it was dogmatic, and everyone operating within the hierarchical context of communism had to show fealty to the dictates of the Comintern. The Comintern was an organization that was started by the Bolsheviks in Moscow under Lenin in order to be the driving force for the international proletariat revolution. So every communist party in every country in the world took its dictates from the Comintern. So the Comintern had spies and all sorts of nefarious, subversive, espionage, Soviet apparatchiks in every single solitary country where there was a communist presence, which is to say everywhere. And they moved clandestine, many of them, as you all know. And the key reason why homosexuality was forbidden, it was a very practical reason. Why? Because the Leninists and Lenin himself believed that homosexuals would be a risk to the movement because homosexuals would be susceptible to blackmail. And if you were susceptible to blackmail, you could not be a successful Soviet agent because you could not be a successful spy. But mind you, according to Marx and Lenin's own writings, there is no morality that precedes the supernatural. So therefore, according to what Hay is saying, he's saying that he took to the Communist Party because he believed that the Communist Party would support homosexuality in principle. And to that, he's right. Because morality as a concept is subordinate, these are Lenin's own words, are subordinate to the cause of the party, the proletariat revolution. So, in other words, the ends will always justify the means. Do whatever you have to do. Do whatever is necessary. Legal, illegal. If you have to lie, steal, murder, cheat, kill. Marx and Lenin, this is why you always hear the term Marxism, Leninism. You sort of hear them, right, together. Because Lenin was nothing more than a parrot of Karl Marx. He virtually took Karl Marx's writings and repeated them word for word as leader of the Bolsheviks. Marx said it explicitly that you must do these things because Marx understood how revolutionary his ideas were and that people were not going to just freely go along with them. They must be forced to do so. And while being forced to do so, they must be successfully changed. And so you say, man, well, how can they claim to be these people? They're for the rights of the people. They're for this and for that and this and that. But how do they justify all of this murder? How do they justify? I forgot who it was. I think it was the man. He was one of the chief editors that helped put together the Harvard Press's book called The Black Book of Communism. If you all haven't read it, haven't looked into the Black Book of Communism, he said a lot. He said that not only was violence a commonplace in wherever you find communist governments, but they turned violence and murder into a wholesale industry. It was the very practice, the very mentality of the governing structure was violence and murder. Marx would say, when he said, I know that you all are saying, well, how do you justify this? Marx would counteract or come back at that argument by saying this. He says that what we have essentially is everything that you claim that we are for today. So justify what is happening today. So when you listen to the left, when they talk about capitalism and all of the criticisms that they have about Western civilization, see, when we look at totalitarianism, statism, when we look at what these dictatorial systems do to humanity, their comeback is, well, what's the difference from what we have today? That's how sick these people are, because their mentality is, well, freak it. Forget it. We may as well give it a try because we're suffering anyway, not recognizing and realizing that man will always suffer because the suffering of man is a broad indictment, or better yet, a broad description of his overall fallen nature. But communists do not accept that because communists reject God. Communists don't realize that the fact that we live as good as we do today, particularly in the West, is an aberration. This is not man's natural state of being. Man's natural state of being is war, death, poverty, suffering. God gave us a respite so we may find him. But the more we reject him, the more we retreat back into barbarism. Now let's get back to Harry Hay. He married a fellow member of the Communist Party named Anita Platsky in 1938 to ward off any suspicions that he may be gay. The following year, Hay moved to New York City to support the leftist organization Popular Front. Throughout his time as a prominent figure of the Communist Party and his marriage, he had many homosexual affairs, most notably with the actor Will Geer. Do you all know who Will Geer is? Will Geer played the father on the hit TV sitcom The Waltons. That's right. Will Geer was not only a big-time communist, he was a big-time homosexual. And I'm gonna get off into. I'm gonna do another live stream about Hollyweird, and how many of them were in fact doing the bid of the Communist Party that you all didn't know about. Did you all know that I Love Lucy? Did you all know Lucille Ball was a member of the Communist Party for about 2.5 decades? Lucille Ball was a communist. I don't know if y'all knew that. I got some more too. I'm gonna get on all of them. I'm gonna say that for another time. But communism was rife throughout Hollywood. Prolific. And we know this because we have the congressional testimonies of those who were outed by Congress, both Republican and Democrat. And many of the communists who were in Hollywood weren't the folks in front of the camera. It was the men and women behind the camera. But anyway, I digress. We'll get to Hollywood on another presentation. The budding gay rights activist went on to write and my boy, your boy James Cagney. James Cagney was a big-time communist. Anyway, these are some of the biggest movie stars from the 40s, y'all. If y'all don't know who James Cagney is, and Will Geer and Lucille Ball, then, you know, Anyway, the budding gay rights activist went on to write a manifesto on the movement wherein he was the first to view homosexuals in the United States as a culturally oppressed minority. He was the first. A term usually attributed to racial groups. So it was Harry Hay who introduced the idea that gays are an oppressed minority. His ideas, however, were not published until 1951 in the essay, The Homosexual in America. Again, Harry Hay, let me say this, and I think I wrote this down somewhere. Harry Hay is the father of the gay liberation movement. He is the father of the gay liberation movement. Harry Hay. And keep in mind, my boy, the real ICO, was just made a statement about a lot of these Hollywood cats being CIA assets and whatnot. But the CIA, the FBI, just like every other institution, right? You have you got to understand. You take someone like FDR. He won 4 terms. He was the man who brought us out of the Great Depression. He was the one who defeated Mussolini, Tojo, and Adolf Hitler. He had communist spies so far up in his administration that his top advisor, a man by the name of Harry Hopkins, was a Soviet apparatchik. We all know about Alger Hiss. How many of you know about Harry Hopkins? How many of you know about his first ambassador to the Soviet Union, William C. Bullitt? Oh, man, I'm dropping too many names. Let me get back to it, because I ain't going to finish messing with you. That's why I got to stay out of the comment section. Because best believe our FBI and our CIA have been overrun by foreign apparatchiks, as we well know. The very man in the White House. We got a lot of folk in high places who got hidden documents next to their Corvettes, if you know what I'm talking about. The question is, we as citizens, what are we going to do about it? Let's move on. With the help of Chuck Rowland and Bob Hall, Hay established the Mattachine Society. Have you all heard of the Mattachine Society? A secret homophile organization in Los Angeles. The term Mattachine came from a medieval French term used to describe male dancers who satirized social conventions. The initial years of the society's establishment consisted of meetings led by Hay and meant to bring awareness and to educate members on the relationship between social justice and homosexuality. Why they bringing drag queens into the schools? How have we gotten here? Why are we here today? I mean, for crying out loud, man, gay, they just want equal rights. They just want peace. They just want to. That ain't what they want. At least they members. At least, let me tell you. Never mind. Let me keep going, man. I don't want to have too many tangents, because if I do, I ain't gonna finish. Because I got a lot to say. Let's go back to what I've written down here in preparation. Hay spent most of his life advocating. Now, this piece I specifically pulled from a 2002 Los Angeles Times article commemorating the life of Harry Hay after his death. This came from the LA Times. Hay spent most of his life advocating a coalition of all minorities and arguing that each group's cause was part of a larger progressive movement. In the 1970s, he supported equal rights for women as well as Native American issues. But we're going to get to that. Sorry, guys. We're going to get to that. Harry Hay and Native American issues. Why was Harry Hay so into Native American issues? We're going to get to it. In the 1980s, he helped to found the gay caucus of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. So Messy Jesse had his own homosexual coalition. Or caucus, I'm sorry. Now, eventually, of course, Harry Hay, like Reich, he was expelled from the Mattachine Society. Why was he expelled from the Mattachine Society? Why he was expelled from the Mattachine Society? Because of his affiliations, or not his affiliations, but because of his membership to the Communist Party. Other members of the Mattachine Society was like, man, this don't look good, bro. You already got the government breathing down the Communist Party's neck. You got this person and that person being called before the House on Un-American Activities to testify whether or not have you ever been a member of the Communist Party. We don't want that kind of smoke, bro. We just trying to bring awareness to the plight of homosexuals, dog. But if you affiliated with the Communist Party, man, you got to go. So Harry Hay ended up getting kicked out of the very group that he founded. He also left the Communist Party after 17 years a member. Why? Again, because he thought that he didn't abandon his communism. He just, as a good soldier, he thought it would be best to bow out. Because he was, again, told that, man, it's making you too susceptible to blackmail. Because remember, Hay went and got married and he had children. All the while he was having a sexual relationship with, the Hollywood ilk, most notably Will Geer. Now, let me go on. He resumed his role as a gay rights pioneer and leader in 1969. By then, he was out of the Communist Party. He was out of the Madison Society. When he helped found the Los Angeles-based Gay Liberation Front. However, he was disappointed in the measured spirit of the 1970s gay movement. So, to Hay, the 1970s gay movement was a little bit too, it wasn't enough for him. It wasn't radical enough for him. So what did Hay do? As a result, Hay confounded the Radical Fairies. Ooh, the Radical Fairies. I wonder what that's all about. Another semi-public gay community through which the rights of homosexuals were coupled, check this now, with ideas of spiritual renewal and New Age practices. New Age practices. What the hell are these New Age practices they talking about? Well, we're going to find out. I went to find out, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw, what I read. Here we go here. Let me see if I can pull it up. Hopefully I still got it. Here it is. So I went to the Radical Fairies website. They're still in existence. I'm going to tell you I'm just going to read what's on their homepage. We are queers of all ages, genders, shapes, and sizes, of all colors, nationalities, and faiths, or none, they put in parentheses, who connect to life and each other through the blessings of nature, the power of the heart, through listening and sharing our stories, through our bodies and spirits, and through humor, drag, song, good food, drumming, trance, massage, ritual, play, and sex. And they put sex and they put 9 X's at the end of sex. So what it says here is play and sex. We are queer people exploring a life of radical community, sustainability, and harmony with nature. Queer people finding non-judgmental cooperation and discovering subject consciousness. We have no religious dogma. We are full of spirit. We refuse hierarchy and we embrace consensus. So they refuse hierarchy and they embrace consensus, right? Pure democracy. You hear all these tyrants throwing around the word democracy. That's what consensus is. It's not republicanism. Fairies meet in cities, on beaches, and in forests, and on mountains, wherever we can create community of the heart. Welcome, the fairy sanctuary in Europe. So, Hay was big into New Age. Also, Harry Hay, he doesn't get enough credit for this, but if you know anything about Harry Hay, in fact, was one of the first to introduce environmentalism to the politics of the far left. So remember what I said when Harry Hay, it says that he began to take up Native American issues. Why? Because he used what he perceived to be the Native American spiritual system and he applied it to his sort of wayward, elastic conception of sexuality and sex itself. He took the concept of two-spiritness. You ever heard that term, to be two-spirit? Two-spirit is, it's involved with the whole LGBTQ madness. Well, the term two-spirit was borrowed from Native American spiritual practices, which were introduced into the lexicon of far-left politics by none other than Harry Hay. But there was someone else who Harry Hay had an affinity for, and is a name that I know all of you are familiar with. And Harry Hay was obsessed with the teachings of none other than Aleister Crowley. Crowley, he began to experiment. I'm talking about Crowley now. He's not the third horseman. I'm still on Hay. Crowley began to experiment with sex magic that was later to help make him notorious around 1909, which played a crucial role in the gay liberation movement. This is an article written in Veterans Today by a man named Jonas Alexis. Here's a quote from Crowley. "I shall fight openly for that which no Englishman dare defend, even in secret, sodomy." I'm gonna tell y'all something. Do y'all know who Walter Duranty is? Y'all know who Duranty is? Walter Duranty was the lead correspondent that was sent to Moscow on behalf of the New York Times to investigate the goings-on in the Soviet Union and how their collectivization efforts were going. Walter Duranty became a mouthpiece for Joseph Stalin. Walter Duranty would hide the crimes of Joseph Stalin. The New York Times, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. The New York Times is one of the most disgraceful institutions in American history. The fact that I'm going to do a live stream. I'll probably just expose every single solitary New York Times scandal. Walter Duranty won a Pulitzer Prize for his research, so-called research and reporting on the Soviet Union. The entire time he was lying at the behest of Joseph Stalin. Walter Duranty. Why do I bring up Walter Duranty? That seemingly came out of nowhere. Well, the reason why I bring up Walter Duranty is because Walter Duranty was a lover of Aleister Crowley. Oh, shit. Y'all didn't know. Y'all heard the name Walter Duranty, but y'all didn't know that he and Aleister Crowley had some dealings. Oh, but they did. But let's be clear, because I'm going to try to be as factual as I possibly can. Walter Duranty, by all accounts, by all Crowley biographers and Walter Duranty biographers, neither one of them were homosexual. Now, I know what y'all saying. What the fuck you mean? You gotta be. Once again, Crowley he would engage in what he called these sexual magic and these various things. And so there are stories, right, of them trying these things. I don't need to get graphic, y'all, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And Crowley and Duranty would have difficulty performing these rituals because neither one of them could stay erect, because they would try to perform sexual acts on each other, but they could not maintain an erection. This is according to the words of Walter Duranty biographers. I can't think of the name. Mind you, y'all, if y'all don't believe me, y'all just look this stuff up, okay? All right, I'll give y'all some references, some things y'all can go and read if y'all don't believe me, but yeah. Anywho. So what I'm about to read is coming from a book written by Stuart Timmins. The book is entitled The Trouble with Harry Hay. The Trouble with Harry Hay. Stuart Timmins, he knew Harry Hay personally. They were friends with one another. And I believe Stuart Timmins was also homosexual. I think I'm not sure. Timothy, if you out there, I'm sorry if if I'm mislabeling you. I think he was gay, but I know he was a friend of Harry Hayes. Stuart Timmins wrote in his book, "The resemblance between Crowley and Hay is quite striking. Both men dropped out of college. Both men were involved with homosexual magic. Both men loved poetry, and both men hated the moral order which they see in Christianity. During his years at Stanford University, Hay wrote poems, including a poem entitled Sodomy and another poem entitled Hell's Patterns. Hell's Patterns. Here's a few lines from the poem Hell's Patterns. The poem reads, "Black and white patterns in magic, and me, the mind that is chained, and what is an altar to God when the cloth has been stained." Like Crowley, Hay, this is Stuart Timmins, like Crowley, Hay went on a pilgrimage to seek enlightenment through occult teachings and black magic, although he would pretend that it was something different. Many homosexual intellectuals of that same era and beyond had a fascination with magic and the occult, including two other homosexual intellectuals, William S. Burroughs and Gus Van Sant. Aleister Crowley, ladies and gentlemen, had a whole lot of buddies who are in the communist movement. Not only that, but a lot of either members of the Communist Party or small c communists, meaning those who agreed and endorsed the beliefs of the communists without actually joining the party, had a fascination with Aleister Crowley. You know who else had a weird obsession with Aleister Crowley? Who were buddy-buddy with Aleister Crowley? None other than L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology. Oh, I got a whole lecture coming up about Scientology and the Nation of Islam. Y'all pray for me because I'm going to need it. Because a lot of folk, they don't even know. They have no idea. I'm going to go on. Sometimes the kids from, this is Timmons. This is the excerpt I pulled from his book, The Trouble with Harry Hay. Sometimes the kids from the Filth and Famine League would go hear Harry play the organ for the Los Angeles Lodge of the Order of the Eastern Temple. Y'all heard of the Order of the Eastern Temple? The OTO? Well, the OTO was an occult, a secret society group that was founded by Aleister Crowley himself. Based on the Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society concerned with the use of ritual sex in magic, Crowley's society was not so secret and was known to have created homosexual sex magic rituals. The OTO's motto, this one y'all know y'all familiar with, and I'm about to read it. The OTO's motto was, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Inspired the name of its church mother, the Abbey of Thelema, which in Greek means will. This was, of course, Crowley's famous thing. He was obsessed with Thelema, the magic, the sexual magic of Thelema. I'm going to go even deeper when it comes to Hay. These are the words pertaining to Hay of a man by the name of John Thornstead. Who's John Thornstead? John Thornstead is the founder of NAMBLA. What's NAMBLA? NAMBLA is the North American Man-Boy Love Association. Harry Hay was a supporter of the North American Man-Boy Love Association. And this is another one of the reasons why Harry Hay was kicked out of the Mattachine Society. Once again, because even Harry Hay was too radical for the Mattachines. How can you support pederasty and pedophilia? Here's John Thornstead's words on Harry Hay. Hay, founder in 1950 of the first gay group to survive, the Mattachine Society, co-founder of the Gay Liberation Front, Southern California chapter of the Gay Liberation Front in 1969, co-founder of the Radical Fairies in 1979, father of the U.S. gay movement and grandfatherly icon of gay liberation, died on October 24, 2002 at the age of 90. Harry was a vocal and courageous supporter of NAMBLA and intergenerational sex relationships. Though since his death, many of the assimilationists in the gay and lesbian movement, including its most prominent organizations, have sought to erase that part of his radicalism, not to mention his communist roots and vocal critiques of their own accommodationist approach to the powers that be. So what is John Thornstead, founder of NAMBLA, saying about Hay? He's saying that He's criticizing the gay liberation movement because he claims that you are not giving the very founder of your movement its just due, because you are ignoring the fact that he endorsed pedophilia, which is what we stand for, and you are ignoring his communist roots, right? And the vocal critiques of their own accommodationist approach to the powers that be. So what he's saying, he's criticizing the gay movement, John Thorstead, and he's criticizing the leftists, the hardcore communist movement, right? Because communists were accommodationists, according to John Thorstead, because communists were even willing to draw the line, at least at the time, that, wait a minute, bro, you're going too far now. That's why we don't let you weirdos up in here. Because we trying to fight for the workers' revolution. We want equality. We want all that shit. But you talking about screwing little kids. But John Thorstead is saying, but wait a minute. But here's a man in Harry Hay who is an icon of radical left-wing politics. And you are ignoring the fact that he was a supporter of us. And he was. This is coming from the Encyclopedia Britannica on Hay. A champion for a diverse homosexual identity, Hay often waded into contentious debates, notably by advocating for such controversial organizations as the North American Man-Boy Love Association, a pro-pederasty group. So that is, in a nutshell, the founder of the gay liberation movement. Mind you, y'all, I don't have all the time in the world. This is coming from, I'm talking about 30, 40 hours of research and reading. I'm trying to put it in a nutshell for y'all. I'm diving headstrong, head deep into all this sickness, so y'all don't have to, okay? Now we move on to the third horseman of the apocalypse. I was debating on who I wanted to cover next, but I guess I'll go in chronological order. Do y'all know who Kate Millett is? Do y'all know who Kate Millett is? Kate Millett. She was born September 14th, 1934 in St. Paul, Minnesota, and she died on September 6th, 2017 in Paris, France. Kate Millett. Who is Kate Millett? Kate Millett was an American feminist, author, and artist, an early and influential figure in the women's liberation movement. Her first book, Sexual Politics, began her exploration of the dynamics of power in relation to gender and sexuality. Kate Millett. Damn, y'all. So if I came here with a wig and a skirt on and shit and called myself a trans woman, would I be allowed to talk about feminism? Huh? Am I allowed to talk about feminism because I don't know what I'm talking about? Because I'm a man, you see? As a man, I'm a member of a class. And my perspective or my understanding, the knowledge that I gain as a man is downstream from my membership to my group or my class, which is men. And my construction as a man is then downstream from what I enjoy materially within the society that rewards me for my masculinity, you see? That's going all the way back to Marxian materialism, the dialectic of materialism. So I'm not allowed to talk about feminism because of my identity, because my identity informs my understanding, and my identity is informed by my position within the hierarchy that is inherently oppressive, because some people have access to privilege because of trivial things such as wealth, such as sex, such as race, right? And others are not. So I'm not allowed to talk about feminism because I don't have a brain and I can't flip and read. So we're going to go to what Kate Millett said. Or matter of fact, let's go to what the Time magazine said about Kate Millett in 1970. Kate Millett's book, Sexual Politics. It was written by her in 1969 and published in 1970. Just to give y'all some perspective, if you're not old enough, it took the world by storm. It took the country by storm. That was the beginning of the women's liberation movement, full brunt, strong, attaboy, out of the gate, here it come. Kate Millett sprung it all. She was fawned over by our left-wing press. The Time magazine, this is the same Time magazine that heralded Hitler, the man of the year in 1934. What they said about Kate Millett in 1970 is that her book was the Bible of women's liberation. The Bible of women's liberation. No. Let me rephrase that. That wasn't the Time. I'm sorry. That was the New York Times. The New York Times said that her 1970 book, Sexual Politics, was the Bible of women's liberation. It was, in fact, Time magazine, not the New York Times. It was Time magazine that described Kate Millett. Check out what Time magazine, how they described Kate Millett. Time magazine described Kate Millett as the Mao Zedong of women's liberation. The Mao Zedong of women's liberation. Here's Time magazine. In her book, and this, like I said, this is a 1970 article I pulled from Time magazine's archives. It reads, in her book, Millett defines politics as the power-structured relationships by which one group, in this case the male elite, governs others. Patriarchy is thus limned as the institutional foe, labeling it as the most pervasive ideology of our culture. So according to Kate Millett, patriarchy, in her words, was the most pervasive ideology of our culture. She argues that it provides our fundamental concept of power. Women are helpless, in other words, because men control the basic mechanisms of the society. Her solution is drastic, according to this Times writer, and her solution is demolish the patriarchal system. The Times goes on. The civil rights movement, and I kind of dilly-dally with this when I did a lecture on YouTube about the Black Panther Party, if you want to go back and check that out. The civil rights movement, in an ironic way, created additional converts to the feminist cause. Now, hold on. How did that happen? How did the civil rights movement create more feminists? You see, and let me say that, who is in fact the moral exemplar of the 20th century? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the man who's most synonymous with the civil rights movement? Is he not? Of course he is. How is it that, so what you mean, what you saying, Chuck? He is the poster child for the civil rights movement, but in effect, the civil rights movement is what created additional converts to the feminist cause. Now, wait a minute. You say, now let me sidetrack for a second, because I'm talking to black men right now. Because y'all the main black manosphere, Kevin Samuel sycophants that's running around here calling yourself red-pilled. You're the same ones talking that shit about feminism while you're the same one fawning all of this praise on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with no modicum of critical analysis of his legacy whatsoever. You have no idea what you're talking about because you don't know Dr. King the way you should know him. Because you take the heroes that they give us and you put them on a pedestal and you don't think to ask yourself, who in the hell are these men? Because you want to mock the Umar Johnsons of today. You mock the Tariq Nasheeds of today. You mock the Ibram X. Kendis of today. Well, guess what? I got news for you. Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Dr. Martin Luther King and the rest of them, they were the Umar Johnsons of their day. Yeah, you're damn right I said it. And I'm glad I said it. Because you don't even realize what it is, in fact, that is destroying you. You wonder why you can't find a wife. You wonder why you're running around here, can't find a woman to marry so that you can enjoy God's gift of sex within its proper context, the way God designed it. Why you running out here fornicating out of your mind because you can't find a wife. But you the same one still running around with that power to the people. I'm blackity black and I'm black nonsense. I'm a king, I'm a queen. Motherfucker, you ain't shit. Because if you're a king and I'm a king and every other black man walking around is a king, then being a king don't mean shit. You're not a king. You're not owed anything. To quote my homeboy Chad O. Jackson, Dr. King turned the black race from a trying race into a crying race. Those are Chad O. Jackson's words. And I'm going to borrow them, but I got to give my boy the credit because he's the first person I heard say it. You can't sit up here and say, well, I have the right to complain, but they don't have the right to complain because my cause is real, their cause is not. But your cause is based upon what? That I, as a black man, am unequal? Well, homosexuals are unequal because they're not the same as everybody else, because they are taboo, because they're ostracized and looked upon as something different. So they want to destroy social conventions because they don't want to be looked upon as the other anymore. But you criticize them, but you the same one out there taken to the streets when a black man high on some foreign substance gets killed by a police officer while resisting arrest. You the first one out there in the streets want to tear shit up. But then you the first one on the internet watching the Kevin Samuels video talking shit about black women and how they adopted feminism at your expense. I don't want to hear that shit no more. Dr. Martin Luther King is no hero. Yeah, I said it, and I'm glad I said it. Let me get back to this. I know some of y'all done probably left the live stream. I don't care. The civil rights movement created additional converts to the feminist cause. During the Southern turmoil of the middle 60s, many women volunteers found the sexist discrimination extended even within the revolution. Civil rights, says one organizer, has always been a very male-dominated movement. Most radical organizations saw to it that the chicks operated the mimeograph machines and scampered out for coffee while the men ran the show. So you set the example. You set the tone, Adam. So when Eve look at you and she look at your crybaby ass, huh? Oh, the white man. Oh, the government. Oh, this, oh, that. And they looking and they saying, well, damn, within the confines of where I sit, from my point of view, there's a hierarchy that exists within here as well, and you oppress me. So you can't then turn around and cry the Moody Blues because the same Marxian methodology is now being applied to you, because we have to continue to move the margin to the center until we reach the end of history. Until we reach the communist utopia where there is no inequality. Either you with it or you against it. That's why you got so many of these men that's running around talking about they blackity black and they black and strong. But yet and still, soon as a feminist walk in the room, they tuck their tail between their legs and get into that black girl magic energy bullshit. And wonder why the community look the way it does. Because society needs men. But you ain't acting like one. Legally sanctioned paths towards change, as far as Kate Millett is concerned, this is the Time magazine, are simply not enough. Kate Millett calls for what? She calls for a cultural revolution, which must necessarily involve political and economic reorganization, but must go beyond as well. Her target is the patriarchy, the one ancient and universal scheme for the domination of one birth group by another, the scheme that prevails in the area of sex. Those are her words. Kate Millett, this is a quote from Kate Millett. Male power is enforced by the man's position as head of the household. Get what this crazy ass broad is about to say here. Other members of the family must rely upon his economic and social status. Within the family, gender roles are ideologically reinforced. So gender roles are ideologically reinforced because the man is the head of the household. Girls, for instance, are taught to cook and sew passively, in imitation of their mothers. Boys are encouraged to be aggressive in imitation of their fathers. So the system is reinforcing itself. Biologically, she argues, there is little real difference between the sexes beyond the specific genital characteristics. So there's no difference besides our reproductive organs. The shit. But she says she does get, she said, well, wait, the heavier musculature of the male, she admits, is biological in origin, but culturally encouraged. No, you gotta love these motherfuckers. So this is the logic she gets herself, but this is the twisted. Yes, that men are bigger and more muscular, biologically speaking. This is a biological fact. But she says it is culturally enforced. It is culturally encouraged through breeding, diet, and exercise. So, and I know it's a lot of y'all out there that's doing some good work on diet and hormones and the foods they putting and all the way male testosterone and all that stuff is on the decline. They got all types of studies showing that our grandfathers were more manly than we were. They can measure this scientifically because our great grandfathers had more testosterone. We seeing all the craziness, right? We seeing it, right? So there is a concentrated, protracted effort to make men more feminine. Kate Millett said way back in 1970 that men are stronger, born that way, yes, but the culture encourages it through diet and so man, stop exercising, stop eating right, don't go to the gym, grow man breasts, get a big old baller belly, as they call them, you know what I mean? Get soft and do all that little stuff. Let your woman get all overweight and let her get bigger than you. That's why. In any case, she says, physical strength is not a factor in political relations. This is what she says. But in order to, let me read this before I criticize what she said. Because these are her words. Civilization has always been able to substitute methods, technical weaponry, knowledge for those of physical strength. So what Kate Millett is saying that, yeah, men may be bigger, they're stronger, whatever. But women have ways, potentially, of counteracting the man's prerequisite strength. They can use knowledge, weaponry, technology. So, yeah, you may be bigger, but you take a man with a gun and a woman with a gun, the odds are a bit equal. Or how about men don't have a gun at all and the woman has a weapon at long distance? But speaking of the late Godfather, Kevin Samuels, what has to happen? You see, before you can get to the level of societal organization where the kind of contemporary technology that we are used to can be readily accessible to both male and female, the natural environment must first be tamed. You don't just come up with weapons and technology and buildings and skyscrapers and plumbing systems and irrigation and all the shit that we take for granted. You don't just come up with that shit out the blue. Men create the world. Men civilize the world to protect the weaker of the species. The only reason why a woman can grab a gun, the only reason why a woman can call 911 if she needs something, if she feels like she is in danger, because these are all institutions that have been laid down and made possible by the sacrifices of men who died in the service of humanity. And goddamn it, it's about time men start to get credit for that. Because you can't do shit, Kate Millett, without a man. She was married too, did y'all know that? She eventually left her husband because she was really a so-called closet lesbian. Now I want to move on to something. Kate Millett, the founder of feminism. Why did I bring Kate Millett up? Well, I wanted to bring up Kate Millett because I'm going to move on. Hope I can get through all this without having to break this lecture up into two parts. Kate Millett had a family, y'all, obviously, right? She has a sister, a younger sister named Mallory Millett. I don't know if you all are familiar with Mallory Millett. Man, I wish I could read these comments, y'all. I know y'all laying some stuff in the comment section, but I can't. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm not trying to be rude, but I just can't read them. But talk amongst yourselves. This will go up on YouTube if y'all want to run it back. Anyway, Mallory Millett is an outspoken conservative activist today. She writes books. She gives lectures. But a large part of her appeal is the fact that she was Kate Millett's sister. And everybody wants to know what Kate Millett was like. What was she like? What was it like growing up in a household with her? Well, we're going to get to see what kind of person Kate Millett was. This is coming from Mallory Millett, Kate Millett's younger sister. Mallory Millett said she was asked a question by, who's this man? This man's name is Mark Tapson. I'm not sure exactly who he was doing this interview on behalf of. Mallory Millett wrote a book, if you all are interested. The book is titled My Sister Kate, The Destructive Feminist Legacy of Kate Millett. My Sister Kate. In 1969, I'm going to go back to the question. Many people aren't aware of feminism's roots in cultural Marxism. This is Mark Tapson. But you were present at many early meetings of the revolutionaries who would go on to form the NOW, the National Association for Women. Can you tell us what you witnessed behind the scenes about their true aims? Here's Mallory Millett. In 1969, I attended consciousness-raising sessions in New York City with my sister Kate, where a group of 10 to 15 women sat around a long oval table and plotted the new feminist movement and founded the NOW. Their template was Mao's China, and the group confessionals conducted in each village in order to cleanse the people's thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know about Mao Zedong and the Cultural Revolution, I don't know what the hell rock you've been living under. Mao Zedong is the most murderous dictator in human history. The Cultural Revolution took place barely 60 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't that long ago. And the only reason why we haven't had a full-fledged cultural revolution here in the United States is because them punk-ass leftists too scared to come kick your door in and drag you outside because they're afraid of what might be on the other side. Click, click, bang, bang. You dig what I'm saying? It's our Constitution that has kept this civilization going, or kept this country going as long as it has been going. But if you don't know about Mao's Cultural Revolution, I suggest you look into it. The burning objective of Kate's consciousness raising was the destruction of the American family. As she deemed it, patriarchal institution devoted to the oppression and enslavement of women and children. They went on to form the NOW, and with that organization, achieved their stated goal of taking down the patriarchy through a massive coordinated promotion of what? Of promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, abortion, and homosexuality. Their proposed method was to infiltrate every institution in the nation, including the universities, the media, primary and secondary schools, PTAs, and teachers' unions. Teachers' unions, by the way, had been infiltrated long ago by the Communist Party, particularly at the behest of a woman who was a dyed-in-the-wool communist who later abandoned the Communist Party and turned her life over to Christ and spent the rest of her life trying to warn Americans about the threat that was being posed by communists inside of our own borders. And that woman is a woman by the name of Bella Dodd. If y'all not familiar with Bella Dodd, look up the life of Bella Dodd. Bella Dodd says she was tasked by the Communist Party to infiltrate the teachers' unions as far back as the 1940s. You wonder why our teachers' unions are so sick and corrupted today? But they were infiltrated by the Communist Party back in the 1940s. Let's move on. City and state governments, the library system, the executive branches of governments, as well as the judicial and legislative bodies. One of their most desired results was the smashing of every taboo in Western culture. Imagine that. Think of that alone. The normalizing of every taboo: polygamy, bestiality, Satanism, pornography, promiscuity, witchcraft, and pedophilia. All activities which rot the human soul and the city. Nothing burns down a society with such dispatch and totality as the unleashing of taboos. My sister Kate decided her contribution would be to establish women's studies at every U.S. college and university, which she efficiently executed. I've said it time and time again. Women's studies are not academic disciplines. African American studies are not academic disciplines. Queer studies are not academic disciplines. Critical race theory is not an academic discipline. Critical gender theory is not an academic discipline, and so on and so forth. These are not academic disciplines. This is quackery. These are charlatans. And I swear to God, I ain't never spent a day in no postgrad. I got a bachelor's degree in arts. I will take on any of you jackasses with a PhD. And I want you to tell me I'm wrong. Right here, let's debate critical theory of any kind. Me and you, face to face, mano a mano. I guarantee you I will have you in a fetal position in the fucking corner. And then this ain't an ego thing talking. But we are at war. Our society is being trampled upon. And I ain't gonna take it no fucking more. This was Mallory Millett warning us about what her sister did. This is her own sister. I'm going to skip down. So they infiltrated every system and department. Oh, yeah, and I'm going to read this sentence. On examination, these courses emerged as nothing more than Marxism 101. Let me move down. So they infiltrated every system and department in education, media, entertainment, government, justice, Wall Street, you name it, they are there. For decades since they started their stealth invasion, the father in every sitcom has been debased. And most of all, clueless. Look at your sitcoms today. Where are the strong fathers? Where are the strong men in these families? They're buffoons. The women run the show. They run around, scampering around, wondering what their wife gonna do, what the wife gonna say if the wife get mad. Happy wife, happy life. That's bullshit. Just ask Adam. Happy wife, happy life. I'm gonna bite of the fruit because it might impress my wife. Just go back to Mallory Millett, dropping gems. Every sitcom father is debased and most of all clueless. I am dumbfounded at the efficiency with which these women recruited others and willed their way into everything in 40 short years. Oh yes, in one hell of a powerful force. Now we have a nightmare army of militant feminists. She names them Lois Lerner, Susan Rice, Loretta Lynch, Sally Yates, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Uma Abedin, Nancy Pelosi, Oprah Winfrey, Samantha Powers, Elizabeth Warren, Cheryl Mills, Maxine Waters, Donna Brazile, Hillary Clinton, and on and on and on. These folks like Kate Millett, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, this became part and parcel of the university experience back in the 60s and 70s. These young adults, they didn't grow out of this shit. They stayed this way. And guess what? Half of them went into politics. The other half went into the universities, and they continued to Sovietize these students. Look at our college campuses today, where conservative speakers can't even step foot on campus without bodyguards, while you got unrepentant terrorists like Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, founders of the Weather Underground, who not only are welcome on college campuses, they still teach there. Bill Ayers is anyway, y'all know who Bill Ayers is. Let me get to the, anyway. So, let me move on. I just want one more thing. Mallory Millett. Here she goes. She said, Mark Tapson asked her another question. This is a long interview, but I'm just going to the stuff I thought was more interesting. Can you tell us a bit about Kate's mental instability and if you think it had anything to do with her radicalism or vice versa? Do you think her radicalism affected her mental state? Here's Mallory Millett's response to that. Kate was mentally ill for as long as I can remember. She was 5 when I was born, and our older sister, Sally, says that once I arrived, Kate was hanging over my bassinet plotting my murder. We shared a bedroom from my birth. From the earliest memory I can recall trembling from the vibrations of her insanity. She was the most disturbed, megalomaniacal, evil, and dishonest person I ever knew. She tried to kill me so many times that it is now an enormous blur of traumatizing horrors. She was a sadist, a torturer, a deeply ingrained bully who took immense pleasure in hurting others. Incorrigible and ruthless, she was expelled multiple times from every school she attended. Mallory says, I spent my childhood with heart hammering as I tiptoed through the house as not to be noticed by the dreadful Kate. Our mother was hopeless, helpless, paralyzed with terror in the face of my sister, Kate. That's the mind state of Kate Millett, the founder of women's liberation and the one who wrote the Bible on feminism that was published in 1970 entitled Sexual Politics. I'm going to go off the dome. Mallory Millett has a personal relationship with a scholar, a conservative author and scholar by the name of Paul Kengor. If you're not familiar with Paul Kengor has a slew of books. Either one of them are excellent. I'm currently reading one of Paul Kengor's books right now. He never disappoints. Paul Kengor details some of the things that Mallory Millett told him personally about her sister Kate Millett. And Mallory Millett disclosed to Paul Kengor that she believed that Kate Millett was actually possessed. And she means this is not hyperbole. She believed that her sister Kate, ever since they were children, was possessed by either the devil or some kind of demon. Her family tried to get her help numerous times, and she was just, those are Mallory Millett's words. Mallory Millett even discloses how she believes that Kate, I just read it. But Kate Millett was possessed by a demon, according to her own sister. Not only that, but Kate Millett was too into sexual magic. Mallory Millett details stories to Paul Kengor that Paul Kengor outlines in his research about how they would have these all-female lesbian orgies, and they would have all types of pagan rites and rituals and snakes and all kinds of other things involved. Because at the time, Mallory Millett was sort of, as the little sister, was still sort of looking for affirmation from her big sister. She still looked up to her big sister and wanted that relationship. But once her sister became an adult and really became enamored with these Marxian, with feminist politics, she really began to see that her sister could not be saved, could not be helped, and so it goes. But yeah, Mallory Millett gives great detail about the life of her sister Kate. So that's the third horseman, Kate Millett, and I'm gonna end this with the fourth. I hope I haven't been too long. Let's see. I can't even look at the clock up there, but I'm almost done, y'all. I hope y'all enjoying this. We got one more person to discuss, and that person is none other than Gail Rubin. I've mentioned Gail Rubin in the past on my YouTube channel, but we're going to talk about Gail Rubin. Who is Gail Rubin? We're going to talk about her. Yes. Kate Millett was, just go, My Sister Kate. I advise you guys to go read that book, My Sister Kate, the founder of women's liberation. Okay. Gail Rubin was born January 1st, 1949 in South Carolina. She's still alive today, y'all. She teaches at the University of Michigan. The University of Michigan was also once the educational home of none other than John Dewey. University of Michigan is also the place of study for none other than a man I mentioned earlier, Bill Ayers. A whole lot of wacko communists came out of University of Michigan. My home state. Hail to the victor. Gail Rubin. She's an American cultural, I just pulled this straight from Wikipedia because I just needed a quick definition, just a summation of her life. Is an American cultural anthropologist, best known as an activist and theorist of sex and gender politics. She has written on a range of subjects, including feminism, sadomasochism, prostitution, pedophilia, pornography, and lesbian literature, as well as in anthropological studies and histories of sexual subcultures, especially focused in urban contexts. Now, this is what I'm about to get into, y'all. Her 1984 essay, Thinking Sex, is widely regarded as the founding text of gay and lesbian studies, sexuality studies, and queer theory. She is now an associate professor of anthropology and women's studies at the University of Michigan. Gail Rubin, ladies and gentlemen, is widely considered by scholars to be the founder of queer theory. What is queer theory? Well, I'm about to tell y'all. Because remember, this is 1984. This is her 1984 book entitled Thinking Sex. I pulled some quotes. I'm not, see, when I talked about Wilhelm Reich, I talked about Harry Hay, it kind of get real because it's cool. You got all this communist, you got this, it's almost like it's like a spy movie, right? It's like, you watching listen to some James Bond kind of stuff, right? And what's ill, y'all, let me say this as a side note before I get into Thinking Sex. This is ill. How many Hollywood movies have we seen that talks about that deals with Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany in some form or another? How many of them have we seen? Do you know that there are so many interesting stories that Hollywood could tell, about communism and individuals who were involved? There are scripts out there, I can guarantee you, or there are scripts waiting to be written. What's up, Hollywood? Y'all can make a lot of money because these are some interesting stories. Could you imagine what an autobiographical picture of Kate Millett would look like on the big screen? Why not tell that story? Let's hear about Harry. In a true and honest way. How about that? Can we get a story about Manning Johnson? Benjamin Gitlow. These are all men who testified before Congress, detailing their life. How about we get a biopic on one of the most influential men in American history to detail the behind-the-scenes politics of the international communist movement, a man by the name of Morris Childs. Can we get a biopic on Morris Childs? There's stories out there that could be told. We don't want to tell them. No movies. Like communism don't even exist. Communism is the story of the 20th century, and Hollywood don't even want to talk about it. It's a complete blackout. Thinking Sex by Gail Rubin. From the late 19th, all I did was, because that's why I talked about all the espionage and all the fact, because I'm telling it's some stories. The Rosenbergs. We could talk about how Soviet apparatchiks were smuggling information pertaining to the Manhattan Project to the Soviet Union, which is why the Soviet Union was able to construct their first nuclear bomb by 1953. The world would have never figured out how to construct an atom bomb had it not been for Soviet spies. Can we get a movie? Hollywood, I want it. Without your slant, of course. But that ain't gonna happen, is it? We know it ain't gonna happen. I'm being tongue-in-cheek because we know it ain't gonna happen. Gail Rubin, she ain't, I don't know if she's involved in all that. She may be on the Chinese Communist Party. She may be on their payroll. But these are quotes I took from the essay Thinking Sex. From the late 1940s until the early 1960s, erotic communities whose activities did not fit the post-war American dream drew intense persecution. Listen closely now. Homosexuals were, along with communists, the object of federal witch hunts and purges. It's funny, ain't it? It's funny how homosexuals and all these sexual minorities, I like how homosexuals are always trying to ride the coattails of, it's just like a homosexual activist. Oh, trying to ride, I said, well, they're after us the same way they're after all these communists, right? They called it a red under every bed. They were trying to attack, men like Senator McCarthy for red baiting is what they called it. This was a crackdown on civil liberties because the federal government was all up and down, all up in everybody's ass about whether or not they were a communist. And so what the Communist Party did was they successfully co-opted these civil libertarian groups, and they hid amongst their ranks.
so they can freely operate behind the guise of civil liberties. Homosexuals simply wanted the same thing. Let the communists operate. But see, the Communist Party is not like the Democrats and the Republicans. Maybe communists are more like Democrats now, but that wasn't the case back then. And you all know I'm partisan, but I'm being honest. Some of the most staunchest anti-communists in American history were Democrats, men like Woodrow Wilson and Harry Truman. I'll say that for another live. So, again, there is no validity to the Red Scare, just like there isn't any validity to this whole homosexual nonsense. This is a moral or conservative panic. Gail Rubin says in Thinking Sex, right-wing ideology linking non-familial sex with communism and political weakness is nothing new. So in 1984, people were drawing links between communism and homosexuality. Did I not just go over Wilhelm Reich? Did I not just discuss Harry Hay and Kate Millett? If you had a right to think, or at least assume or take seriously that there may be a connection between communism and radical sexual politics, Gail Rubin is trying to say that something is wrong with you. You see how they, what we call it nowadays, gaslight, see how they gaslight you? They call you out for calling them out for doing exactly what they're doing. It goes on. During the McCarthy period, Alfred Kinsey and his Institute for Sex Research were attacked for weakening the moral fiber of Americans and rendering them more vulnerable to communist influence. After congressional investigations and bad publicity, Kinsey's Rockefeller grant was terminated in 1954. I don't know if my boy, the real ICO is still up in here. I told him I was going to talk about Kinsey. I didn't dedicate a whole thing to Kinsey, but anyway, that's a little bit on Kinsey if y'all are interested. So at the time, in the 1950s, Gail Rubin is saying, writing in 1984, that there were critics of Alfred Kinsey and others suggesting that the weakening of the moral fiber of Americans rendered them more susceptible to communism. What did Yuri Bezmenov tell us in the early 1980s? Or Alexander Solzhenitsyn, any of these men? There's an interesting, I ain't gonna name drop nobody else because y'all's probably information overload. So what do you think? So do you think that weakening the moral fibers of America makes them more susceptible to communism? If it didn't, why the hell are they doing what they're doing? Textbook gaslighting. Popular sexual ideology is a noxious stew up an idea. Let me make sure I read this correctly because it's not sounding right to me. Popular sexual ideology is a noxious stew. Oh, I'm sorry. Popular sexual ideology. There should be a comma there. That's why I wasn't making sense. Popular sexual ideology is a noxious stew made up of ideas of sexual sin, concepts of physiological inferiority, anti-communism, mob hysteria, accusations of witchcraft, and xenophobia. Xenophobia? Where the hell that come from? Accusations of witchcraft? Is every homosexual into witchcraft? I don't know. But what I do know is that homosexuality is an abomination according to that book. Does that mean you're a Satanist? Does that mean you're into witchcraft? I don't know, man. I'll let a theologian answer that question. We talked about Aleister Crowley, didn't we? You see how they play these games? But again, they threw anti-communism in. Why she keep doing this? Concepts. So popular sexual ideology is a noxious stew made up of ideas of sexual sin. So she's calling it noxious to suggest that sex should be had in there's a right way to have sex. There's a proper moral sexual code. She's lambasting all of that and saying that they are besmirching people who are the sexual minorities of our community by accusing them of being physiologically inferior, accusing them of participating in witchcraft and everything else. And this is being fueled, in part, she claims, by anti-communist hysteria. I'm going to talk about in her essay, Thinking Sex, where she details what happened to a photographer named Jacqueline Livingston. Jacqueline Livingston. Hold on now. Let's talk about Jacqueline Livingston. The experiences, and I'm almost finished with this. The experiences of art photographer Jacqueline Livingston exemplifies the climate created by the child porn panic. Now, if you all go out and read Thinking Sex, it talks about, listen, y'all, it ain't enough time to talk about this essay, Thinking Sex. This woman still has a freaking job. She's working at the University of Michigan as an associate professor of anthropology and women's studies. You wonder why your child coming home with hairy armpits and blue hair and nose rings and shit, talking about down with the patriarchy? This woman should have been drummed out of polite society the moment this shit was published. 1984. The child porn panic, she says. An assistant professor of photography at Cornell University, Livingston was fired in 1976 after exhibiting pictures of male nudes, which includes photographs of her 7-year-old son masturbating. Y'all, I'm gonna put this video on you. They're gonna pull it down, y'all, for obscenity. They ain't gonna let this video stand. But it's okay if you read. See, now this shit is in your children's libraries now. This is in the public school library now. But back then in 1978, you had professors in college showing photographs of 7-year-olds masturbating. This in your children's schools now. What you gonna do about it? Check this out now. Y'all know Ms. Magazine? Y'all know about Ms. Magazine, right? Ms. Magazine, Chrysalis, and Art News all refused to run ads for Livingston's posters of male nudes. At one point, Kodak confiscated some of her film for several months. Livingston lived with the threat of prosecution under the child porn laws. The Tompkins County Department of Social Services investigated her fitness as a parent. Livingston's posters have been collected by the Museum of Modern Art. Of course they were. They're still somewhere out there. The Metropolitan and other major museums. But she has paid a high cost in harassment, anxiety for her efforts to capture on film the uncensored male body at different ages. It is easy to see someone like Livingston as a victim of the child porn wars. It is harder for most people to sympathize with actual boy lovers. There she go again. Like communists and homosexuals in the 1950s, boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders for their civil liberties, let alone their erotic orientation. So Gail Rubin is suggesting that we need to find defenders for their civil liberties. These are people, adults, who are sexually attracted to boys. And they are going to use the child porn panic, this is what they did in the 1970s, to go after people for displaying naked images of the male body, the prepubescent male body. Because there are some people out there who adore the naked bodies of underage children. Why is there no one defending them, Gail Rubin says. The founder of queer theory. And you say some slick shit out your mouth, they coming for you. They coming for your job. They coming for your reputation. It don't take courage to do this. It don't take courage to sit up here and stand up against this kind of sickness. It should be second nature. What you mean, bruh? I couldn't wait to come back here and get in the studio, man. I'm going to read on. Because if you ain't got the heart to fight up against this, I don't know what's wrong with you. The law is especially ferocious in maintaining the boundary between childhood innocence and adult sexuality. She puts innocence in air quotes, y'all. Go read it yourself. She puts innocence in quotes. So childhood innocence, that's what they so-called innocence, and she puts adult in inverted quotes as well, air quotes, and adult sexuality. So children are only innocent because somebody said so. Adult sexuality is only adult sexuality because somebody in power says so. Because children, or should I say, sexuality is something that should be accessible to both boys, or should I say both adults and children. Rather than recognizing the sexuality of the young, I was young. What you talking about? And attempting to provide for it providing for it in a caring and responsible manner, our culture denies and punishes erotic interest and activity by anyone under the local age of consent. The amount of law devoted to protecting young people from premature exposure to sexuality is breathtaking, she says. Breathtaking. I can't believe it. We got too many laws protecting children from sex. The primary mechanism for ensuring the separation of sexual generations in age of consent laws. These laws make no distinction between the most brutal rape and the most gentle romance. A 90-year-old convicted of sexual contact with a 17-year-old will face a severe sentence in virtually every state, regardless of the nature of the relationship. Nor are minors permitted access to adult sexuality in other forms. They are forbidden to see books, movies, or television in which sexuality is too graphically portrayed. Understand, this is a problem to this woman. She thinks this is a problem. It is legal for young people to see hideous depictions of violence, but not to see explicit pictures of genitalia. Sexually active young people are frequently incarcerated in juvenile homes or otherwise punished for their what does that word say? For their precocity. Yeah, we'll go with that. I've never seen that word written down before. Anyway, we move on. Adults who deviate too much from conventional standards of sexual contact are often denied contact with the young, even their own. Yeah, Gail, we do that for a reason. What you think the reason may be? Well, wouldn't you love to be in this woman's class? What would you say if you took her class and she came out talking this shit? What would you say? Custody laws permit the state to steal the children of anyone whose erotic activities appear questionable to a judge presiding over family court matters. Countless lesbians, gay men, prostitutes, swingers, sex workers, and promiscuous women have been declared unfit parents under such provisions. Members of the teaching professions are closely monitored for signs of sexual misconduct. In most cities, certification laws require that teachers arrested for sex offenses lose their job and credentials. If you are arrested for a sexual crime, you lose your job. Just to think, you have sex with a minor and your job is to educate children. You can't be around children if you like to have sex with them. Now mind you, Gail Rubin is, see, now look at our legal system today. Oh yeah, Antonio Gramsci, Vladimir Lenin, the slow march through the institutions, our judicial system, everything. Now parents are having their children taken away because the children are trying to protect the parents are trying to protect their children from having their genitals removed. You see, folks like Gail Rubin, they didn't stop. Back in the 1980s, they kept pushing. So all the folks that got law degrees, that passed the bar exam, they took Gail Rubin's class. This is the shit they learned. And that's why our court system is so corrupt. Revolution through education. John Dewey, anybody? In some cases, a teacher may be fired merely because an unconventional lifestyle becomes known to school officials. Moral turpitude is one of the few legal grounds for revoking academic tenure. The more influence one has over the next generation, the less latitude one is permitted in behavior and opinion. The coercive power of the law ensures the transmission of conservative sexual values with these kinds of controls over parenting and teaching. So what she just said is that the law ensures that conservative values are reinforced to every successive generation due to the law's ability to control a person's access to parenting and teaching. So it is legalism that allows for the perpetuation of sexual norms. So those who are amongst the sexual elite are using the law to reinforce sexual bigotry. The same way that this crackpot, who my boy sent me, I forgot her, I wish I knew her freaking name, in making reference to Kimberly Crenshaw's essay on whiteness as property, talking about how the law is used to reinforce the very concept of whiteness as property. Well, sexual normality is reinforced by the law. And once again, sexual normality is a form of property, and it is the law that determines who has access to it. I don't know what critical theory is, y'all. I'm just a nigga from the hood off West 7 Mile that's just talking. It is a mistake to substitute feminine. This is ending, and I'm gone, y'all. It is a mistake to substitute. Now, this is how she ends. This is how she concludes. I believe it was chapter 9. This is how she concluded. But she talked a lot about Marxism, and I'll talk about this. It is a mistake to substitute feminism for Marxism as the last word in social theory. Feminism is no more capable than Marxism of being the ultimate and complete account of all social inequality. Don't you get it? Marxism laid the foundation. Then came feminism. Gail Rubin is saying that's not enough. It's not enough. Nor is feminism the residual theory which can take care of everything to which Marx did not attend. These critical tools were fashioned to handle very specific areas of social activity. Other areas of social life, their forms of power, and their characteristic modes of expression, their own conceptual implements. In this essay, I have argued for theoretical as well as sexual pluralism. Like gender, sexuality is political. Sexuality is political. It is political. Yeah, these radical gay activists. Why is it any of your business what goes on in my bedroom? Notice how it got to that, to now they want to radically transform the society because it was always political. Because to the left, everything is political. If you know and you study and you understand Marx, everything is political. And let me add this also as a caveat. Leftism did not begin with Marx. Marx was a student of the left because communism predated Marx. That's an essay for another day. Marx adopted communism, but he didn't invent it. Sex is political. What did Wilhelm Reich say? If you want to break down the authoritarian fascist state, you have to have sexual licentiousness. Lascivious, what's the word? Not licentiousness, because that's a legal thing. You have to have sexual libertinism. They believe that the United States is an authority. They believe that the United States is a wicked, evil, oppressive, capitalistic, colonialistic, imperial. Listen to how these fools talk. Like they reading off a script. They don't have one original thought. Just peddling and nonsense. Colonialism, imperialism. They can't even define what these words mean. But going back to Wilhelm Reich in the 1930s, you debilitate, you defeat an authoritarian society by getting rid of said society's sexual taboos. So sex has always been political. It was never about privacy and what you do in your own home. Oh, your kids, they gonna get this. They gonna get this drag queen shit. They gonna get it. I'm sorry. Remember how I started off this talking about what the quote from Michael Swift? It was satire, but he may have thought he was playing, but he wasn't playing. They wasn't playing. I have argued for theoretical as well as, I read that already. I have argued, I keep going back to the same thing. It is organized into systems. So let me start again so it's more concise and it's more cohesive and makes sense. Like gender, sexuality is political. It is organized into systems of power which reward and encourage some individuals and activities while punishing and suppressing others. Like the capitalist organization of labor and its distribution of rewards and power, the modern sexual system has been the object of political struggle since it emerged, and it has evolved. But if the disputes between labor and capital are mystified, sexual conflicts are completely camouflaged. And that's how she ends chapter 9. And it goes on. It goes on. So what she's saying is, she's like, look, man, Marxism in a traditional sense deals with the issue of capital and labor and wealth and income redistribution and so on and so forth. But again, you have to understand, and I've said this numerous times, and I'll say it again. These people are never happy. And the reason they're never happy for a multitude of reasons that are far more, spiritually and based. I don't want to go there right now. But in closing, what we have to understand is this: is that no matter how flawed a society may be, man is always in constant pursuit of truth. Man must adhere to what he believes to be true in order to balance the dissonance within his own conscience. And when you have men that are functioning on that basis, that's when civilization begins to form. Because downstream from man's pursuit of truth comes a system of values. My truth, my truth, my truth. Who's to say that bestiality is immoral and homophobic? Who's to say? Well, therein lies the problem, doesn't it? Because if everyone has their own version of the truth, then essentially everyone has become their own God. And if everyone becomes their own God, what we have done is essentially destroyed, not in point of fact, but in point of perception, the one in true God, who in fact informs you on what truth is. Cannot have civilization or society without truth and without a value system. What Gail Rubin is saying is that there shouldn't be a value system, because when you have a value system, inevitably certain people are going to be left out because God gave you free will. And if you don't do what God expects you to do or desires of you, well, then guess what? You don't get rewarded by the society, because society, when it is functioning at its best, is trying to mirror that which was commanded of them by God. But we've fallen away from that, haven't we? So, I'm out, man. I'm glad y'all stuck around, checked it out. I don't know what is going to be the next thing I get off into. We'll see how the spirit moves me. But I was kind of. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope that was nice and everything. I kind of was. It's been a while. I ain't been in the studio in about 2 months, but that was it. Again, man, support your boy. Throw something in the tip cut, whatever. So I keep bringing y'all this fire. Cause it gets deep, and I ain't gonna stop. This is only the beginning. Teach him Chuck. Again, coming at y'all, and yeah, man. You know, parting is such sweet sorrow, but I gotta go. Peace out.
Ooh.